Hey guys, I'm Mr. Hark. In this video, I'm going to tell you a Bigfoot story that's always fascinated me, and honestly, it kind of unsettled me too. Back in 1992, a scientist named Lucas, he was around 32 at the time, reportedly discovered what looked like a young Bigfoot deep in the forest. He took it back to his private lab, studied it, observed its behavior for nearly 10 years, and what he found was, well, shocking. Now, I'm not saying whether this story is real or not. That's for you to decide. But the details are genuinely strange and disturbing. So before we dive in, take a second to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get into it. I'll just say it the way it sits in my head. For 9 years, I kept something in a concrete room in the forest. I fed it, named it, studied it, and then I watched it die in front of me for no clear reason. It tried to say my name with its last good breaths. That's the part that still gets me. Not its size. Not the howls outside the building. Not the handprints on the walls. It's the way it spoke, like a person who grew up somewhere we don't have a word for yet. You can turn this off and write me off as some old man telling stories. I get that. But if you've ever sat in the woods at night and felt that feeling that something is watching you, you might want to hear this all the way through. Because I was the one watching for a long time, and I was wrong about who the animal in the room was. I'm 65 now. This all started when I was 32. Back then, I had money, pride, and way too much curiosity. My father left me more than I deserved when he died. My brothers turned it into more money. I turned it into a lab in the woods. On my paperwork, I was an independent biologist studying animal behavior. In practice, I was a rich idiot with a private research site buried in the Cascades, playing with traps and cameras and calling it science. I grew up on Bigfoot books. Those old black and white photos, plaster casts, grainy frames of something walking away into trees. Other kids moved on. I didn't. It just sank deeper. The lab was an hour and a half off the main road, old service building at the end of a logging track, with a generator bolted on behind it. 2 rooms, a cold storage, a yard we fenced in, and miles of fir trees around it. That's it. Olivia was the serious one. My girlfriend then. She worked part-time for a government wildlife department. Real job, real credentials. She did population surveys, disease work, that kind of thing. She came up on weekends and some evenings. Said she came for me. I think the truth is she came for the forest more than me. I was just the idiot with the keys. That's the setup. That's all you need. A man with money and an obsession. A woman who still believed in rules. And a building in the middle of thousands of acres of trees where no one ever came, unless we asked them to. Now I'll tell you what I did with that. It started with a broken camera. Late summer, 1992. Hot day, damp air. Forest smell thick. We had motion cameras rigged on a game trail where we'd been tracking cougars. One of them went dead. Whole unit just stopped pinging. I walked out there alone to fix it. That's the boring part. Boots on wet soil, mosquitoes, the usual. Halfway there, I heard footsteps on the trail ahead of me. 2-footed. Light, but not human light. You learn the difference. Deer have that 4-step rhythm. People have another. This was in between. I stopped. It stopped. I stepped off the trail and crouched behind a fallen log. I remember my heart going fast, but not from fear. From that stupid kid in me saying, maybe this is it. Leaves moved up ahead. Salal bushes shook. Something stepped out onto the trail. It was not a giant. It was small. The size of a human kid, 4 feet, maybe a bit more. Covered in dark brown hair, longer on the arms and shoulders, patchy on the chest. The face, that's where my brain slid. Too flat for a chimp. Too forward for a person. Nose, brow, jaw, all wrong and all right at the same time. The eyes were deep and dark and wary, and they were not empty. It walked like it expected to be hit. It sniffed the air, turned its head slowly, listening, hands flexing. It wasn't clumsy. It moved like it knew every stick and stone on that trail already. My first real thought was, someone dumped a lab animal out here. Then it bent down and sniffed the spot where my boot had been 10 seconds earlier. It froze. Its head came up. It looked around like a kid who suddenly realizes he's lost. That's when it said something. Soft. 3 syllables. It sounded like Samari or Sumari. quiet but shaped, not a bark, not a grunt, something closer to a word. I felt something in my chest, click. You know that feeling when a picture comes into focus? It was like that. I stood up without thinking. The thing whipped around and saw me. We looked at each other full on. Whatever was in its eyes in that moment, it wasn't the flat look you get from a deer. "Hey," I said, like it was a kid in a parking lot. "Hey, it's okay." It stepped back. Wide eyes, breath fast. It didn't scream. It didn't bolt. It just watched me, like it was waiting to see what kind of thing I was. There is a version of my life where I walk away right there. I don't live in that version. I carried a tranquilizer rifle when I went out. Standard in that kind of work. We'd use it on bears sometimes if we had to move them. The thought came through clear and ugly. If you let this go, you will never see it again. You'll be another story online. Or you can be the one who finally knows. I pulled the rifle up slow. I told myself I was doing it gently, kindly, for knowledge. That's the lie we use when we want something. The dart hit it high on the thigh. It let out this sharp, shocked cry, grabbed at the dart, pulled it out, threw it, tried to run. Made it a few steps and went down on its side. Legs kicking, then slower, then still. I was on it in seconds. It was heavy, dense. Up close, the hair smelled like wet dirt and sweat. The skin underneath, where I checked its pulse, was warm and pink. The fingers that had grabbed at the dart were long, with blunt nails that looked too much like mine. It was breathing, sedated, heart fast but steady. I knew, standing there in the damp ferns with that thing at my feet, that I had just done something I couldn't undo. I radioed Olivia. She thought I was messing with her. "You tranquilized the what?" crackled through the speaker. "Just get the truck," I said. "Bring the stretcher. And the big cage." "I'm not joking," she cursed, but there was this little pause, like she heard something in my voice. When she pulled up and I showed her what was under the tarp, she didn't say anything for a few seconds. She just stared. It's one thing to read reports, another thing to look down at 4 feet of something that isn't supposed to exist, lying there breathing on your forest floor. "What did you do, Lucas?" she whispered. "We bring it in," I said. "We stabilize it. We find out what it is. We call someone," she said. "Who?" I asked. "Your supervisor." "Mine? They'll be up here with a van and a non-disclosure in an hour, and we'll never see it again. And whatever they do with it, we will have zero say." She knew I was right about that part. That's the awful thing. The only worse cage than mine is theirs. We loaded it into the truck. It slid around under the tarp once and a hand flopped out, fingers splayed, then went limp again. On the drive back to the lab, every bump in the road felt like a step towards something I did not have the training or the right to handle. I drove anyway. Our lab was a joke for something like this. We cleared the old storage room. We had a steel kennel we sometimes used for larger animals. We reinforced it, chained it down, checked every bar twice. We put it in there, still sedated, IV line in, monitor on. I wrapped the restraints around its wrists and ankles with more care than I had ever given a human patient in my life. Up close, it got harder to pretend it was just some unknown primate. The soles of its feet were almost hairless, the palms of its hands too. The nails were thick, but not claws. It had calluses in the same places you get them when you walk barefoot a lot. Skin tone under the hair was normal, too normal. It had a smell. Not bad, just alive. Earth, sweat, something musky. When it woke up, everything in the room changed. The eyes opened, focused fast. No long leg, no confused thrashing. It blinked, looked at the IV line, at the restraints, at me, at the fluorescent lights. It tested the straps gently. One wrist, the other, ankles. No wild pulling, just checking. "Hey," I said again because my brain had run out of better words. "You're okay." It made a noise in its throat, not a growl, more like someone warming up a note. Then the lips moved and that same word came out, clearer now. Sa, ma, rai, 3 beats, quiet but shaped. Olivia was behind me, arms folded so tight her knuckles were white. "You heard that," I said. "I heard it," she said. She sounded a little sick. I loosened the wrist straps. Stupid. Maybe, but it just watched me. No lunge, no grab. It lifted one hand, slow, and touched the tape on its arm where the IV went in. Then it reached out and touched my wrist. Light, testing. I can still feel that exact weight. Warm fingers. Slight tremble. Animals react. This thing checked. That's the line I crossed that day. I stopped thinking about it and started thinking about him. We hadn't earned that, but that's what happened. People think the horror starts right away. It doesn't. Horror creeps. It lets you get bored first. Those first months, if you wrote them down without context, they'd read like any primate study. Food trials, sleep logs, stress tests. We tried meat first. Raw bacon, beef. He sniffed it, made a face like someone smelling rotten eggs, turned his head away, and pushed the tray aside with the back of his hand. We tried fruits and nuts, berries, apples, hazelnuts. That was different. He picked up a berry between finger and thumb, held it up to the light, sniffed it, then ate it. Chewed slow, swallowed, then reached for another. Sorted through the tray, picked out the ones he liked, left the rest. He drank water from a bottle. We held it for him the first day. The second day he took it, watched me unscrew the cap, then copied it. Took him a few tries. He got it. He slept curled tight at first. Later he stretched out more, on his back, one arm over his eyes, exactly how I sleep when I'm too wired to relax. We talked to him, a lot. It sounds stupid now. Two grown adults standing in a cage, repeating words like parents with a toddler. Lucas, I'd say, tapping my chest. Lucas. He watched my mouth, tapped his chest. Didn't say it, not then. Just filed it away. He, on the other hand, kept using his word. Samari, sometimes other strings of sounds, always with that rhythm. It didn't sound random. It had the cadence of a language. Up, down, pause, repeat. We recorded hours of it. Olivia took a sample into town once on a tape, played it for a linguist friend at a bar, called it some weird primate vocal. The woman listened, frowned, and said, "That sounds like speech." "Where the hell did you get it?" Olivia lied. "Documentary," she said. Old field tape. That lie stuck in her throat for weeks. We gave him crayons and paper. At first we got scribbles, lines, circles, then patterns. He'd draw tall vertical shapes, then smaller shapes around them, over and over. Sometimes one big shape and one small side by side touching. He'd tap the small one, tap his chest, then tap the bars. You don't need a degree to get the gist. Family, group, lost. Olivia tried to keep it clinical. "We're projecting," she would say. "We're looking for meaning." But her eyes would stay on those drawings longer than the others. The first real what the hell night came a few months in. Late fall, rain hammering the roof. Generator humming. It was just past 9. We were both in the office, tired, hungry, arguing half-heartedly about whether to increase his outdoor time. He was in the next room, pacing his cage, muttering his syllables under his breath. The lights flickered, generator dipped, then steadied. For a second, the background noise dropped enough that I could hear the forest clearly over it. That's probably the only reason we caught it. A call came from the slope above the lab. Long, low, rising at the end, then cut off. It went through the walls like someone dragging a bow over a huge string. He froze. The muttering stopped dead. We did too. Second call, closer, shorter. This one had an edge to it. He ran to the back of his cage, hands on the bars, eyes locked on the far wall, where there was nothing but concrete and timber. He answered. Not a howl, not an animal sound. He shouted that same word he used for himself, only louder, desperate. Samari. Samari. Over and over, voice cracking. I turned off the main lights without thinking. The lab dropped into low emergency glow. Olivia grabbed my arm and pulled me down behind the bench. The sounds outside got heavier, branches breaking, footsteps. Even through the concrete, you could hear weight. Something hit the back wall. The metal rang. Tools shook on the shelves. He lost it. Jumping, grabbing the bars, yelling that string of sounds that meant something to him. His voice and the ones outside tangled in the air. A call and answer in a language we were never meant to hear. Another hit, harder. The whole building shuddered. Olivia's nails dug into my arm. "They're going to come through," she whispered, but they didn't. After a few long minutes, the calls moved away. Footfalls, snapping branches, then fading into the rain. He slumped to the floor of the cage, facing the wall, shoulders shaking. No sound now. Just this silent shaking. When we finally worked up the nerve to check the back of the lab with flashlights, we found smeared mud and prints. They weren't clean like in those fake photos, just long streaks where fingers had slid down the metal. Too big for a man, too high up to reach without a ladder. Below them, in the mud, barefoot tracks. Big, deep. That was the first night I realized we were on a clock. We had taken someone's kid. We reacted the way scared people with tools always do. We built thicker walls. We moved his cage away from the outer wall, added more locks, reinforced the foundations. We redid the yard, built a deeper enclosure system, and eventually dug that underground space for him. High ceiling, vents, trees, rocks, running water. We told ourselves we were doing it for his comfort. Part of it was that. The other part was that if something that big hit the wall again, we didn't want it to hit him. During the day, things slipped back toward routine. Food, weights, measurements. At night, the forest tested us. Some weeks, nothing. Some weeks, calls every other night, always from a distance, never close enough for us to see a full shape. We took him outside sometimes. Controlled, fenced yard, double gates. He never bolted for the trees. He'd walk the perimeter, sniff the air, look out between the boards. Sometimes he'd stand at one spot on the fence and stare into the woods for 10-15 minutes, breathing slow, like he was listening to something we couldn't hear. We did that stupid predator test too. I'm not going to leave it out. It matters. We wanted to know if he was a scavenger or hunter. So we brought in 2 deer, one dead from a car strike, one lightly sedated, still on its feet. We put both in his fenced yard, watched from behind another fence. He went to the dead one first, sniffed it, made this disgusted face like when he'd smelled the raw bacon, took a step back, then he saw the live one. I watched his whole body change. Shoulders up, head down, eyes focused. His breathing actually slowed. Every step was silent. No wasted motion. He closed in, quick at the end. Hands at the throat and muzzle. Took it down in one move. No roar, no show. Just practiced, efficient force. The deer kicked for a few seconds. He held on until it stopped. Then he sat back, hand on its neck for a moment, and bowed his head. It looked like a little moment of respect, could be projection. But it looked that way. Then he ate. Meat, fast bites. No interest in the dead one at all. We wrote, "Won't eat carrion, an active predator," in the notes. But I went home that night with this feeling in my stomach. Because the way he had done it, I've seen people dress animals. That same focus, that same lack of waste. He was not a mindless thing. He was a thing with rules. The part that always hits people as the twist came years later, but the seed of it was old. When I was 8 years old, my dad took me camping near our hometown. I had this tiny plastic tape recorder I took everywhere. I wanted to record nature. I was that kid. One night we left it outside the tent running. We listened. In the morning, crickets. My dad snoring. Me talking in my sleep. We laughed and taped over it with music later, or I thought we did. After I brought Samari in, the word he used kept needling me, Samari. The way he said it sounded so familiar. Not from books, from somewhere lower in my brain. I shrugged it off. Then, in 1998, my mother died and I went back to clear out her house. In one of the old boxes in the attic, under school papers and junk toys, was a cassette. On the label, in my own childish scrawl, it said, "Camping 8. I found an old player, popped it in, hit play. Terrible hiss, wind, a few cricket sounds, my dad coughing, little me whispering to himself. I almost turned it off. Then, under all that, clear as anything, came a call. Low, long, rising at the end. Not coyote, not owl. I froze. A few seconds later, buried in static, there were shorter sounds. Words. I could barely make them out, but my body reacted before my brain did. 3 soft syllables. Say, ma, re. I stopped the tape. Rewound. Played it again. Same thing. Not my voice. Not my dad's. Same cadence as the thing sitting in my lab 16 years later. I didn't sleep that night. Back at the lab, I didn't tell Olivia at first. I just queued the segment up, set the speakers low, and hit play while Samari was in his enclosure. The long call played. He jerked upright. When the word came, he ran straight to the glass, pressed both hands against it, eyes wild, scanning the room for something. He shouted back, "Samari," over and over, voice cracking, until I turned the tape off. He kept calling for almost an hour after the sound stopped, searching every corner of his space like he thought someone was hiding there. Only then did I tell Olivia where that recording was from, how old I'd been, how close the campsite had been to where I later built the lab. "You know what that means," she said quietly. "Not really," I said. "Coincidence. Pattern matching. You were out here with them when you were 8, she said. They were within 30 yards of your tent. And now, years later, you've taken one of theirs to this exact same kind of place." I wanted to argue. I didn't. After that, every memory from those camping trips felt wrong. That feeling of being washed from the trees. The night I'd sworn I saw a shape outside the tent, and Dad had told me to go back to sleep. Maybe nothing happened. Maybe the tape was picking up some other sound. But my life stopped feeling like a straight line and started feeling like a loop I'd been walking around in without knowing. As the years went on, the line between animal study and something else blurred and then just disappeared. He grew. By 95, he was taller than me. By 97, he was maybe 7 feet, shoulders like a fridge, but with this fluid way of moving that didn't fit his bulk. We stopped sedating him except for serious checks. He hated the mask. He'd see it and back away, making small, distressed sounds. I couldn't force it on him every month. We went to every few months. We did blood work, basic panels, with what equipment we had. A friend of Olivia's at a hospital lab ran some of the numbers as unknown primate samples and sent us data. They lined up disturbingly close to human norms. Some differences, sure, but if you strip the labels off, they looked like odd human labs, not alien. The imaging was worse. We got him into a hospital scanner one night with favors and lies. Large injured primate from a zoo was the story. Out of hours, no questions, cash. On the screen, his skeleton looked like a human skeleton in a funhouse mirror. Everything beefed up a bit. Some angles different. Skull thicker, brow heavier, but the layout was us. Even the fine details. Tiny marks on the joints from walking upright. Spinal shape. Hip angles. Standing in that cold room, looking at that glowing outline, I had this moment where I felt like I was looking at a cousin at a family reunion nobody told me about. "He's us," I said. Olivia just stared at the screen. "He's close," she said. "Too close. We copied those scans and hid them. Never attached names, never uploaded, never shared." I wish I could say that was because we were noble and wanted to protect him. The truth is, part of it was that and part of it was simple fear. People don't handle that kind of data well. Governments handle it even worse. Not everything about him was gentle. He had a temper, and I have one too. Once, during a long day where nothing went right, I snapped at him, raised my voice, stepped too close to the glass. He flinched, eyes going flat, and grabbed the nearest thing to hand, a metal bowl, and threw it straight at my head. It hit the glass at eye level hard enough to crack it. Then, just as quickly, he backed into the corner, breathing fast, making this low, guilty sound. He wouldn't look at me for hours. We learned his warning signs after that. The way his jaw would clench, nostrils flare. The way his hands would curl. When we saw that, we backed off, gave him space. There were times I heard him crying. That's the only word that fits. Late at night, with the cameras on, he'd sit with his arms around his knees, rocking slightly, making a soft, broken sound. Sometimes he'd talk in that other language between those sounds, voice low, not calling, just talking. You walk past a door and hear someone praying, you know you're not supposed to be listening. That's what it felt like. We played him human voices sometimes, different languages, songs, tribal chants, pop music. He didn't care about most of it, but one old recording, some chant from a remote place, made him sit up. The rhythm hit him. He made his own sounds along with it, matched the beats like he recognized something. We never figured out why. He picked up more English than we expected. Simple words at first, water, food, out, then names. Lucas, OV for Olivia. Once, I cut my hand badly on a piece of metal. Blood everywhere. I swore out loud without thinking. Shit, he was watching. Saw the blood, saw my face, saw my mouth. He said softly afterwards, not angry, just echoing. First really clear word he ever said out of nowhere, and it was a swear. That felt about right for living with me. More worrying were the times he seemed to be talking to someone who wasn't there. On some of the tapes, especially in the last few years, he'd sit in his enclosure and talk fast, with pauses, like a phone call. No other voice on the audio. Just him. He'd pause like he was listening, then answer. Sometimes he'd slip our words in there. Out. Home. Cold. Lucas. It might have been nothing but his brain trying to fill the silence. But I can tell you this. The first time I watched that footage with the sound up, the hair on my arms stood up. He almost died before he died. Around 2000, we took him up to a rocky ridge near the lab. We hadn't been giving him much outdoor time. Too risky. Too many signs of others in the area. But he was restless. It was a clear, cold evening. We took the chance. There was a short cliff there, 20 feet down to a slope of loose rock and dirt. We'd been careful around it for years. He had too. He was usually sure-footed. That day he kept sniffing the air, staring off into the trees. Distracted. We turned to head back and I heard the scrape of boots on rock. I turned just in time to see his feet go out from under him. He went over the edge. No scream. Just this grunt and the sound of a lot of weight hitting rock. We slid down after him, half on our backs. He lay twisted, leg at a wrong angle, breathing shallow, eyes half open. Stay with me, I said, because that's what you say. His mouth moved. Lou, Cass. We got him back with ropes in sheer panic. Sedated him. Scanned him. Broken femur, cracked ribs, small skull fracture. We set what we could. He healed, limped for a while. Never quite walked the same again, but he adapted. Those scans with his bones lit up alongside the old ones we had pushed me past the line. Any doubt that he was a branch near ours on the tree was gone. After the fall, he was different in another way. More focused on home. He started drawing rough maps on the floor, lines, circles, marks. One central area, lines leading outward, marks along them, one mark with a heavy X over it. When he realized I was watching, he wiped part of it away like a kid caught doing something forbidden. Then he grabbed my wrist and looked straight at me. Home, he said. Very clear. You want to go home, I said. He nodded once. Slow. That was the first time I really understood that in his head, this was not his life. This was a pause. A wrong turn. He wasn't our subject. He was a person in the wrong room. I did nothing with that insight for too long. 2001 felt wrong from the start. Olivia was done. With the lab, with me, with all of it. She said it in a tired way, not angry. We crossed all the lines, Lucas. We just kept going. I don't know how to walk this back. I don't want to be standing next to you when it catches up, we argued. We made up. We didn't fix anything. Outside, the activity picked up. More calls. More rocks hitting the building. Tracks closer to the fence. One night, something walked the perimeter, heavy feet in the wet leaves, breathing loud enough we could hear it over the generator. Inside, Samari started to drift. He ate less some days, more others. Sat for long periods, staring at one corner of his enclosure, the spot where the wall met the ceiling. Smiled sometimes like he was listening to a joke, frowned other times, talked under his breath more. We checked his vitals. All normal. We repeated blood work. Nothing obvious. No fever. No infection we could see. The night he died, the sky was clear. I remember that. No storm. Just cold stars over black trees. October 17th, 2001. He ate well that day. Berries, some cooked meat, nuts. Drank water. Walked his circuit. Drew half a map and then smeared it out. Around 9, he curled up in his usual spot near the back wall. Camera showed him shift a few times, scratch his shoulder, yawn. Around 10, the forest went quiet. I have to stress this. It didn't fade. It cut. 1 second, the usual chorus of frogs and insects. The next second, nothing. Like someone muted the world. I stepped outside to check the generator, thinking it had maybe thrown a belt, and that's why it sounded so clear. The air felt heavy, but the sky was cloudless. Off in the distance, I heard one sound. A low call. Not long like before. Short, soft, almost like someone saying a name. From inside, through the wall, I heard him answer once. One word. Couldn't make it out, but the tone in it. Relief. That's the only way I can describe it. I went back in, walked past the office screens. On the monitor, he was lying on his back now, one arm over his eyes like he was blocking a bright light that wasn't there. Something in me whispered, go to bed, check him in the morning. You're tired, you're seeing ghosts. Another part of me picked up the keys. I went down into the enclosure. The air in there felt still, off. He was in the same position as on the monitor, on his back, arm over his eyes, mouth slightly open. Samari, I said, no reaction. I stepped closer, touched his arm. Warm, not hot, not cold, just warm. I put my hand on his chest. Nothing. No rise, no fall. I grabbed his wrist, neck, searched for a pulse. There was none. There was no foam at the mouth, no vomit, no blood, no contorted limbs. His face was calm, almost peaceful. I yelled for Olivia. She came running. We tried CPR. Yes, on something his size. Compressions, breaths, over and over until we were shaking. Nothing. We checked him with what gear we had. Flatline, heart gone. Just like someone had flicked a switch. Later, when we watched the footage, it was worse. At 10:12, he looked up at that same corner of the enclosure he'd been staring at for weeks. His lips moved. No audio on that camera. Then he smiled. Small. Honest. Like someone had just said, it's time, and he'd been waiting. At 10:13, his chest rose one last time. Fell. Then stopped. That was it. No drama. No thrashing. Just a clean exit we couldn't explain. You can hang any words you want on that. Heart attack. Stroke. Some hidden defect we never caught. You'd probably be right. But there's a part of me that will always wonder if, on some level we don't have vocabulary for yet, someone came and took him home without opening a door. We didn't cut him open. That's the part that disappoints the hardcore evidence people the most when I talk like this. They lean in at this point, thinking there's going to be some big reveal. Photos, organs, DNA charts. We had plans, we had lists. We had all kinds of ideas about what we would do if he died. When he actually lay there in front of me, eyes closed, it all vanished. I couldn't do it. He'd sat with me through flu seasons. He'd tried to say my name. He'd handed me dead spiders like gifts. He'd laughed at the sound of burps. Cutting him open felt like walking into a hospital, dragging a person from a bed and putting them on a slab because you had questions. So we wrapped him in a tarp. It wasn't fancy. It was what we had. We carried him out at dawn, backs aching, hands slipping. He was heavier than he had ever looked. We hiked past the ridge, deeper into the timber than we'd gone in years, to a spot with old trees and soft earth. We dug as deep as we could, throwing soil onto our boots, breathing hard. We lowered him in. He lay there in that rough pit, wrapped in blue plastic, looking smaller somehow. I put my hand on his chest through the tarp. I'm sorry, I said. I'm so damn sorry. The forest around us was dead quiet. Then, far off, a call started, not like the usual ones. This was softer, lower, long, and broken. Another answered it, higher. They moved around us, never close enough to see, just voices slipping between the trunks. It felt like being in a church where you don't know the language, but you know a funeral is happening. We covered him fast after that. Soil, leaves, branches. No marker, no stone. If someone needed to find him, they didn't need our help. If humans came nosing around, I didn't want them to find anything. Walking back to the lab, I had the solid sense of being watched. Not hate, not rage, just watching. At the tree line I turned once, nothing there but trees. One branch moving against the still air. Maybe that was just wind. Maybe it wasn't. You know how this part goes in stories. The breakup, the guilt, the drinking, the decline. Most of it is not worth your time. Olivia left that winter, not with a slam, with a long sigh. She packed slowly, took what was hers, left what wasn't. Before she drove away, she asked one last time, "Are you going to tell anyone?" she said. About him. About all of it. And then what? I said. Feds. military, TV crews, hunters. Can you picture how fast this forest gets stripped bare? Maybe it could help protect them, she said, but her voice didn't have much belief in it. You've seen what happens when money smells rarity, I said. He died in a cage because I thought I had the right to keep him. I'm not handing the rest of them over to people with bigger cages. She didn't argue. She kissed my cheek. You loved him, she said, and you hurt him. You hurt yourself too. I can't watch you do more of that. Then she was gone. I shut down the lab, sold some equipment, let the building rot. A few years later, vandals finished what the weather started. The forest is taking it back now. For a while, I kept everything. Tapes, notes, drawings, blood slides, hair samples, copies of scans, all locked in boxes. Then one night, around 10 years ago, I dragged a steel drum into the yard behind my house, poured in lighter fluid, and burned most of it. Pages curled. Ink turned to black snow. Plastic warped and spat. The smoke smelled like history. Why? Because I finally believed myself when I said this. If this ever becomes common knowledge in the way people want it, the YouTube slideshows, the late-night news, the press conferences, it will be the end of them. You'll have a few years of wonder, then fear, then guns and traps and drills in the hillside. People with no respect marching in with contracts and rifles. I won't be the one who opens that door. So I'm here, talking, unverified, with no neat proof, just a handful of stories and a voice that still shakes when I say his name. If that makes it easier to dismiss, good. Safer for them, safer for all of us, honestly. You're probably wondering if I ever went back. I did. Not to the lab. That place is poison to me. I go past it, up through the trees, to the spot where we buried him. I can still find it. The ground there has sunk just enough. The moss is thicker. The trees around it have grown tall, but there's this little open patch, like they're giving that bit of earth some space. I stand there and I listen. Most of the time, it's just wind, birds, the creak of old trunks. Once, on a foggy morning, I heard something else. 3 soft beats, a sound almost under the breath of the forest. Not loud, not close, just there. Sa, ma, rai. Then another sound, even softer, like a voice through an old tape, stretched thin. Lu, kas. I stood there with my hands shaking and my heart pounding like I was 32 again, staring at a kid in the trail. Could have been my brain, pulling shape out of noise. Could have been nothing. But I walked back down that slope with this feeling that somewhere, out in those trees, there is a story about me being told in another language. The story of the man who took one of them, kept him in a bright box, tried to teach him words, almost learned something important, and then lost him. Maybe there's a lesson in there. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend I came out of this wise. I came out of it tired and guilty and more cautious about what we call discovery. Here's the only thing I'll ask you to take seriously. If you find yourself in the woods at night and the forest suddenly goes quiet, don't do what I did. Don't reach for a gun first. Don't reach for a camera. Don't reach for a dart rifle and a cage in your imagination. Just stand still. Listen. If you hear something that doesn't fit any of the animals you know, some long call that seems to put its hand on your chest from a mile away, maybe answer with silence. Let it pass. Because I have seen what happens when you turn something like that into a project, into a specimen, into a secret pet. It doesn't end with a clear photo and a lab report. It ends with a tarp and a hole in the ground and a voice in your head that never shuts up. I kept him for 9 years. I watched him grow, try to speak, try to tell me about his home, and then I watched him smile at something I couldn't see and stop breathing for no reason I can accept. He wasn't a monster, not the way we use that word. He was something very close to us, just living a different story in the same woods. If there's any monster in this, it isn't him. It's the man who looked at a scared kid on a trail, saw a lifetime of questions, and pulled the trigger instead of stepping aside.